Okay, we're a little late, but we're live. Greetings and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about, well, supposedly about magical weapons according to the chapter and magical paradigms. And we are going to talk about magical weapons, but the name of the chapter should have been magical tools. I mean, like I said, we're going to talk about magical weapons because I have a lot to say about that. But yeah, he I think he took some liberties there with the words. The drink for tonight is Saint Germain's. I thought I had a glass, but it looks like I might be drinking directly out of the bottle. Hey, Black Unigriffin, good to see you. Tonight's episode should be pretty fun. We're going to talk about magical weapons, even though the book didn't. Some personal updates. Hello, Romstead. This is Saint Germain's. It's a kind of liqueur. It's very good, very sweet. Intend to be drunk slowly. So it's kind of fun that I'm drinking directly from the bottle, but that's how it's going. Hey, Gavin, good to see you. It's Canada Day. Canada Day here in Canada. And yeah, some personal updates. We went and watched the potato gun contest today. That was pretty fun. That was cool. And then we went and dug some clams and oysters. And Felix tried to fish a bit. Didn't catch any fish. Did get a whole lot of oysters. And I learned how to dig, oh my gosh, I forgot their name. Manila clams, which was a lot easier than digging than when I tried to dig steamer clams in Maine. I didn't succeed my first time with that. In fact, everyone was joking around about seeing me out there with the clam fort jumping up and down on the flats. Like, town of like 500 people and saw me. Quite a few of them saw me. So for days, that was the joke around town. Yes, oysters are pretty good. We baked them until they popped open, and then we put a little cheese in there and cooked them just a little bit more. Hey, Dark Primordial, good to see you. Yeah, we celebrated a little bit during the day. Like I said, we went to the potato gun thing. That was pretty fun, but they must have like specific regulations on the potato guns or something, because I've seen potato guns shoot a lot farther than anything going on in that contest today. I guess I could make a joke about Canadian regulation potato guns, but yeah, so that's pretty much all my personal updates. Go ahead and get started. Always testing mind over matter stuff, and also sleeping supplements for dreams and memory recall. There are some great supplements out there for that. I can never remember the name of it, but there's a South American plant, Tissa Kili or something like that. That is amazing for dreams. My best thing with the dream recall, though, is the save button that I've used in some of my dreams. Nice. That is very awesome. Okay. Yeah, there's been a lot of work with Boris lately. Actually, one of my friends just got to meet Boris the other day. I have a question about time travel sigil tattoo. I had a dream where the city was destroyed by a tsunami, yet I escaped and unintentionally time traveled to the 1700th century. Got any explanation on it? Did you do a sigil to get yourself to go back in time? Because a lot of times when people do past time work, it usually winds up involving dreams. Most of the time, that's how it works. Unless you're like doing messages to try and communicate back to your younger self, which in theory may be possible. I've been trying to do that for a while. And if I have changed anything, I don't remember because the timeline's changed. You know, but I do have a lot of memories from when I was a child that don't seem like the kind of thoughts that a kid that age would be having. And so, there might have been some, you know, fennel seeds. Fennel seeds are awesome. But I also love black licorice. I actually will sometimes put a couple fennel seeds in my pot when I smoke it. And it makes the whole bowl taste like licorice. Okay, so magical weapons was the first part of today's book club. And like I said, I feel he took a lot of liberties with the word magical weapons, because he's just talking about magical tools here. He talks about all your basics. He talks about the wand and the chalice and the pentacle. He brought up the lamp, which is an interesting bit. And maybe we're going to talk about these things. We're going to talk about the things he talked about. But to me, a weapon, well, anything can be a weapon, including where magical tools, especially magical tools, can be used in a weaponized manner. And that's an important distinction, though, because he's not talking anything about using these things for combat, right? He's talking about the normal uses of these things. And he doesn't even bring up the magical sword, which is in many traditions, the symbol of authority and often seen as a magical weapon, because this is the thing that you use to direct other beings, what you want them to do. It can also be used to sever as well as create lines. But that's a magical weapon, right? Something that is at least being used to cut magical lines. And that's not what he's talking about here. Things like the dream staff. This is a magical weapon. This is something that you take with you into your dreams to defend yourself or to attack another being. And it also has a physical self-defense component that can be magically enhanced. And like I said, we're going to be talking about that more on Saturday. I'm going to release some shorts on that, hopefully in the next day or two. Since we'd be talking about it on Saturday, I need to get that done. And, it's, for the most part, the technique that I use is a lot like Irish cane fighting or shillelagh, mixed with some stuff that I've learned from my father. Not weapons knowledge that was passed down. Essentially, not everything that was passed down to me was completely magical in nature. So even that, there's magic involved. Okay, so I have a few magical weapons that I brought here, and I want to talk about those. And then we'll get into the tools that he talked about. Finally finished and finalized all my new servitor scripting program stuff in my journal. That took a long time, started on the 19th before midsummer solstice and finished on the full moon. Nice. Very good. And there's that magic timing, like we were talking about, right? Also consecrated your new wand. Cool. Very good. But yeah, ending something like that on a full moon, that's great for that magical timing that we were talking about just a few sessions ago. Very good. So, like I said, I want to talk about some of the magical tools I have. We've talked about the dream staff a lot. We will be talking about it more in the future, but there are other things. My bone scalpel, which I didn't think to bring in here, and I'm not gonna go running off looking for it all of a sudden because I'm pretty sure it's all the way in the house. But this Noctera, which we've talked about before, is a larger version of the same thing, and it's even more weaponized. But this is something that is designed specifically for cord cutting and for cutting different um, lines of fate. And this is something, I mean, in that capacity, even then, I hesitate to call it a weapon. It can be. This can be used as a weapon. And I would even almost refer to this as a weaponized version of the bone scalpel because it is designed to cut large cords. It is designed to cut cords from a distance, and it can be used to cut cords for entire groups. Where the bone scalpel is much more precise. It's a much more finessing instrument. But even in, like I said, even a knife, yes, cords of fate. That's what I mean by any. Well, yes, it can be used to cut like actual fate in some cases. But what I mean by cords of fate is just lines of probability, like any energetic lines. The same as the stick breaking. Only this is designed to cut things on a much wider scale. Oh, that's sad. Oh, sorry to hear that. She was murdered at the Nine Ladies Stone Circle. Wow, that's that's unfortunate. Um, yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. My condolences. Heat waves have been, yeah, everybody's acting a little mad this year. Um, especially down in the States, but I feel like the rest of the world is impacted by this madness that's going on as well. Hmm. He's only 23 years old. I'm very sorry to hear that. Um, I'm glad that he's been caught and charged though. So at least everybody is safe now. Sounds like he was a bit of a danger. So, um, this in particular, like I said, is something that fair to call this a magical weapon. It is something that is used mostly to alter things, but you could use it very easily as a weapon. And I mean, definitely has the shape of a sword. Now, um, in the thumbnail, I showed Sorrel, the Red Hammer. I don't have her with me here today. And that is something that has. Oh no, that's perfectly fine, Gavin. You are not interrupting with that at all. This is, that's part of. I do have a topic that I'm wanting to talk about and cover, but part of the reason I do these live rather than just doing videos about all this is to provide space. Yeah, one of the most important things to me in all of this is providing some community. This is somewhere for us all to get together and talk. So you telling us what's happening in your life is not interrupting. That's part of what we're here for, right? I am glad that everyone's safe, though. I am glad you found us as well. And you are very welcome here. Yeah, that's, like I say, that's an important aspect. It's one of the things that people, well, as sorcerers in general, not all of us, we tend to be solitary practitioners. And so that doesn't give us, it gives us a lot of freedom, but it doesn't provide that sense of community that one gets from joining a coven or, God forbid, a church, right? Um, so we need spaces like this. This is why the internet has been a big boon to the solitary practitioner. It gives us a way to communicate with each other. It gives us a way to interact and actually have social time with each other. Before this, you might get lucky and know a few others that you could meet at the Denny's coffee shop or whatever at midnight and talk or something. But we have this now. And it is one of the things about the modern world that I'm actually quite grateful for. Anyways, the Red Hammer Sorrel was very much a weapon. But she was something that was directly connected to me. And even though I don't have her to discuss to show today, um, she's a perfect example because she was designed to crush, to destroy. And sometimes I could use her as a tool. Like I've hammered in nails with her a few times, and especially when I was making magical items, I would often use Sorrel if a hammer was needed in any way. But because of her nature as a red hammer and the background where that idea comes from of Sorrel is, well, it's connected to my own past lives and, well, um a reminder of my own mistakes, you know, but it carried with it a large, it actually carried violence with it. And while it was still properly charged, I had to keep it contained. Because if you have a real magical weapon of that nature, they have anger in them, they have violence inherent in the object. You know? So if they're not contained, if they're not held in some way, they can cause the urge for violence. They can make one angry, right? And the hammer was very powerful. But at the same time, things like that, especially in that particular case and how that thing was, I am glad to be out from under it, right? In a lot of ways, that hammer was created by my own past life trauma. And that's sometimes where real weapons come from. You know, broken hearts have jagged edges that can cut like shattered glass. And it is often in our pain that we find cutting edge for magical weapons, especially those pains that anger us, right? This is where rage gnosis itself is built. And true magical weapons, by the way I see this, come in a couple categories. One is like Sorel, the red hammer that I was just talking about. These are things that are connected to the self. These are things that are part of your psyche in a way that have been given a material form so that it can be wielded and used. Often such items are actually then connected to reaching frenzy gnosis, that rage gnosis that I've talked about in other videos. It's actually an item that when you touch it, just touching it will make the belly fire in you rise. It's like I said about Sorel. When she was around, just her being there, just her presence, if she wasn't properly contained, would make me have violent thoughts. Could even affect other people in the area. I mean, I have good self control. Just because I'm having violent thoughts doesn't mean I'm going to do something violent, but it would be there. And within this life, I've finally really been able to I don't know if forgive is the word, accept the things that caused me to carry that hammer. And so I have been able to put it down, right? And in that world where the red hammer got its beginning, that's what I wanted to say about it earlier and I forgot to mention. A blunted object didn't have much other purpose, right? There wasn't a lot of hammering to be done. There might have been some smacking of things, but a hammer uh, like that, only real purpose was violence. And so now it's been replaced by a hatchet that has an edge and is a tool. So I can cut things with it. I can hack things with it. I can cut down trees. I can split wood. Did I have to bury it? Well, it was a hammer, not a hatchet. But no, I had to replace it with a tool. And so now I have a hatchet. And I do still technically have Sorel, but her power is not there anymore because I've healed that. And therein lies the problem with those types of magical weapons. Ideally, they should be temporary. Could you make like a magical bomb or dynamite? Um, yes, yes. Um, you could definitely create such a thing on the astral to use as an astral phenomenon. All you got to do is contain that energy, that destructive desire, put a form around it, and then have that form be one that will break under the right circumstances and let that energy back out. It's like as an astral or dream creation, such a thing would be quite simple. You could take this all the way up to, well, there's all kinds of booby trap uh, spell work, but I don't usually work with that category because it's quite dangerous. Like there's a because it's hard to keep it targeted. Now, if you were making like you could make one that if it was just completely astral, there's no um ethnogenic components or anything like that. You could make a box, put a curse inside of it with the intent that when the person opens it, it curses them, and that would be pretty similar to what you're talking about. But if you do that, you want to make very sure that if someone else opens the box besides the person that's supposed to, that you have a way to make it it not not happen, right? You have to make sure where it doesn't curse them, and that's why real goofer dust. I know how to make it. I don't think I'll ever tell that on this channel. I will anyone I ever tell about that, it will be in person and would have to be for a very good reason. Because goofer dust, in its true form, is a bioactive compound for one. It is physically dangerous. But also, not only is it easy to accidentally goof yourself with goofer dust when making it, once you've put it out there, not only is it going to get the person you were aiming for, but you can get all kinds of other people too. And so, and there's a couple different things in this category. I mean, I don't know the recipe for all of them that are actually bioactive, but I know how to make goofer dust, and I got goofed in a past life. You can survive it, especially if it's just you literally just got the damn infection while you were making it. But yeah, it's a bioactive compound. You've got some lucid dream weapon, some archonic evil spirits, I've been warned, are going to attack me and try to trap me with a spider web. You got some idea how I can defend myself and prevent the attack? I don't know if you saw earlier, but Dream Staff is my first go-to for anything like that. And you can literally take any object that you then just charge it so that it has an astral form that is similar to its physical form, and put it next to your bed, or literally hold it when you go to sleep, and you can take the weapon into your dream with you. For webbing in particular, my first go-to with that is almost always the belly fire. Pulling the fire from the belly, and you can do this in a dream, right? And now you're using etheric energy on the astral, so it has more oomph. But you can actually pull belly fire from your body and visualize it going up the silver cord from your belly, up through your body, through the silver cord that attaches your astral form to your body, even when you're dreaming. There's always a connection. It's not really a cord, but it's a good way to visualize it for this. It goes up the cord, and you can actually, in a dream, blast belly fire out of your hands and just burn the web. Just burn it. Bring some kind of weapon like this, and then you have two things that are half material that you're using on the astral realm. It's extremely potent. Tricks like that are things that we can use on the astral that it's the advantage of having a physical form, right? There are disadvantages, like we're not always fully aware up there. We have to spend time being awake, but we can leave part of ourselves there even when we're awake. And, well, we're heavier. We're limited in ways that when you are not when you're not connected to a material form, there are ways you can get deeper into the astral energetic side, and stay there for longer and build things up. So yeah, it's not always easy. And the fact that we can pull etheric things into the astral realm is a benefit, but it's not an absolute golden ticket, right? That being said, find a good weapon. In this case, I would probably choose something with an edge, but if you're sleeping with something with an edge, put it in its sheath. Do not sleep with an open sword. Good way to cut yourself. I know this from experience. Don't. Don't sleep with an open knife or an open sword. If you're sleeping with something like that, put it in its sheath. It sucks to wake up cutting yourself. And maybe don't choose a flail or something because we don't want to get wrapped up in it. All right. So I said that actual magical weapons go into categories. And we just started talking, we've talked about two of them so far. The past life trauma type weapons or this life trauma type weapons. And those should be temporary because we are trying to grow. We want to grow past these things. They can be used while they're there, but they should be temporary, and you don't want to get too fascinated with them. Like if I had gotten too fascinated with Sorrel, who knows where this life would have gone. I would have, rather than finally processing and accepting that, I could have easily continued in that red. Right? And I mean, it's been multiple lives since that occurrence. And it's always been there in some way. Okay. Yes. I did recommend the is before. That's mostly for dealing with stuff on the material plane. Yeah. The is a weaponized, can be used as a weaponized sound. I'm drinking, it's called Saint Germain's. It's some kind of liqueur. It's like 40 proof. It's quite good. It's very sweet. I forget exactly what it is. I'm trying to see on the bottle here if it says. Oh, it's made from elder. It's made from elderflower. It's very good. But it's one of them liqueurs that you just want to kind of wet your lips. And I would have had a fancy little glass to drink it with because it's much better that way. But I was noticed how low I was on time. I was like, oh, I'll just grab the bottle. I just wanted to get in here at that point. Yes, it is very lush. It's very decadent. It's very decadent, very sweet, good stuff. Okay. So you asking about the dream staff again? Any piece of wood, like ideally strong hardwood. This particular piece of wood is actually, believe it or not, from a wild rose bush. And it's one that was growing near my house when I was a child. There was a pond near my house called Steed's Pond. And I pretty much grew up at the pond next to this rose bush. It had been there my whole life. And then, well, it was quite a while ago now, like 12 years ago, something like that. They cut my rose bush down, which was very sad, but I found this in it. Go to the store and get a good hickory shovel handle, the hardwood store, and cut it to the length that you want. For what I do, and if you decide you want to use it on videos, you want it to come up here. For me, it's exactly 3 feet, but you want it to come right to your hip. That's one way to measure it, is right to your hip. Or the other is your hand, and then about another hand's worth. But, I mean, you don't have to buy a shovel. It's good for it to be hardwood. The wild rosebush wood is incredibly strong. which I didn't know, but it is. Took me a long time to damage that stick at all, but that's the reason there's a stopper on the end of it. It's because I was smacking it directly into an iron plate over and over again during my ghost stories. Because there's one of the ghost stories that I was telling at the time is about, it's a bit morbid, but about a bunch of cult members jumping out a window of the Shiloh Inn there in Salt Lake. And when I would tell the story, as I was talking about the first one jumping, I smack that right into this metal plate that was by my feet, and make everybody jump up, right? Get scared. And I must have done it 50, 60 times before I did any damage to the wood. But I did chip out a little bit here on the end. That's why it's got a stopper on there now, because I had to do some wood glue. But yeah, any stick, anything that you feel would be good as a weapon. I've done it with swords and knives. Like I said, they need to be in a sheath if you're going to do that. But really, wood works better. Wood seems to go better. Wow, Max, that's rough. Lettuce and peanut butter sandwiches. It's not like a perfect panacea, but you could try using the cash cow sigil and see if it helps. Quite a few people have. I mean, when I was down on my luck, it helped me a lot. I also did a lot of oh my gosh, I almost forgot the word, busking with my flute. Awesome. If you do cut down a wild rose bush, be very careful to get permission, or you're going to wind up with a lot more problems. Okay? Don't just go cut down a wild rose bush. Street performing. Busking is street performing. Like mostly I would just play my flute, and we've actually got it here because we're going to be talking about it in relation to other magical weapons. And you use your athame as a magical weapon. Yes, this is what an athame is for. Athame, like everybody pronounces it different. Fun Boy, the cash cow sigil is one of the most popular sigils on this channel. I think I can actually do an emoji of it. Yep, right here. Oh, that's so small. So, yeah, the cash cow sigil is a sigil we have connected to Boris. Here, that's a lot to explain. Let me just do this real quick. I'll get a video up for it. That one, I don't think I even have to go. That one's popular enough. I don't think I have to go to my channel. I can just type in cash cow sigil. There it is. Copy. Okay. What did I do? Oh, I've done something screwy. There. Did that work? Yeah, Romstead can do it too because they're a member. Okay, I missed some stuff here. What is going on here? Okay, there we go. I pulled up that emoji thing and it like made the chat go all crazy on me. Okay, let's see. What did I miss? Hanging on my fridge door under a magnet. Excellent. Very good, Black Unigriffin. Okay. Oh, that sucks, Max. I don't know how good you are with the guitar, but I know you mentioned that sometimes you play the guitar. That could potentially be a busking thing. Like that's helped me a lot when I was low on cash, especially when I was out on my walkabouts. Play my flute, do the cash cow sigil, do the and then go busk somewhere, and it helped. It worked. Got me. I usually only do it till I had like $20, but I'd usually do that in like less than an hour. But also, I don't have fear of crowds or anything like that, so I know that's easier said than done for a lot of people. Okay, there was something else here that I missed, I thought. Okay, and I did remind you, Dark Primordial, that if you do a wild rose bush, get permission, or you're gonna wind up with more problems. There are a lot of blood beings connected to wild rose bushes. It's not all well, I mean, it is fairies, it's all fae, but it ain't just all candy drops and lemonade, whatever you want to call it, when it comes to the wild rose bush. They do have thorns. So, yeah, careful. Okay, so we talked about the dream weapon some. We might get a little more into that. Now we're going to talk about her. This is Sister Shiv. Now, I don't really want to get into everything with Sister Shiv, but this is something that is specifically a weapon. It kind of has some other uses, but it is specifically to use energy to penetrate, to pierce, and to go through barriers with the intent of releasing. Penetrate and release. And it's specifically designed with that to be something that is going to then end whatever it has punctured. This is the type of thing that you use for curse work. It's a very specific type of wand, essentially. And in order to have a wand like this, you need to be willing to use it. That's one of the things about it. Trying to decide what all I'm going to say about that. Be a little easy, would have been a little more likely to discuss it all in greater detail were I drinking something a little heavier than Saint Germain's, maybe. But yeah, a weapon like this has to have been used as a weapon before, and that doesn't have to be like, I'm not saying go out and commit a crime. To be clear, don't go stabbing nobody. Not what I'm saying, okay? It should be one, however, that, well, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It should, in order to make such a thing, it does need to take, it needs to have been involved in a sacrifice. The creation of this weapon is used in sacrifice. Now, to me, that is not necessarily inherently evil. Obviously, because I don't feel that I am inherently evil, and I do own this ship. We take life all the time, and not only is it right that you should eat the thing afterwards, But in order to complete the process, that's part of what is going on, right? That makes it whole, that makes it full, that makes it correct. You did mention that, Max. You did mention that. And that's why we were talking about the sorcery self-defense last Saturday. I don't know if you actually caught the live, but that was part of the reason that I wanted to talk about the sorcery self-defense. I can't remember if you were actually on the live or not for some reason right now. But we were talking about that last Saturday. We're going to talk about it some more this coming Saturday. And I intend to make some shorts between now and Saturday. Yeah, I actually don't think you were. 'Cause I remember thinking this, like, oh man, I wish Max was here because you were one of the people I was doing the episode for. But we will get. I'm going to do some shorts, and we're going to get back to it this Saturday. But yeah. So this type of magical weapon that I'm talking about here with Sister Shiv, this requires acceptance of your ability to kill, right? With something like this, I'm talking about like a chicken or a rabbit, right? And it should be done quickly, cleanly, no cruelty. That is actually important, at least in the creation of this particular item like this. Because we don't want there to be suffering. We want there to just be a quick acceptance and release. We don't want there to be resistance. And this is a very particular type of item. This is something that I remember you had to go and hang out with your parents for a while, and then you came back. It's important to spend time with your parents. That was actually the hardest part for me about seeing that unicorn that we talked about last time. Was I would have liked to tell my mom. I actually made myself pretty sad for a minute there. I sat down and thought, man, I want to tell my mom about this. And then I realized I couldn't. But she knows. Yeah. She knows. Max, things will work out one way or another. You'll make it through to the next thing. I'm sure you will. That kind of thing will happen sometimes at Dark Primordial. Especially when you forget about it, according to Chaos Magic, right? According to the theory of Peter Carroll here. Yeah, Max, that is a very good point. Who I don't know much about the other person you had living with you besides what you've told me, but if they were causing you emotion, if they were especially quietly causing you emotional distress in ways that you wouldn't even realize, that can be very, very destructive. We had someone living here for a while. Yeah, I'm not either, Black Unigriffin. I'm not on the board with forgetting everything. I think we should how would you know if it worked if you really forgot? But what I was saying was, we had someone living here for a while that would do stuff to Felix, and I hope it's okay if I talk about this. I'm not going to get into big detail, but there was someone living here for a while that would purposely just come up and say things, not even bad things, but things that were going to they knew it was going to put Felix in a in a stress state of mind, and it was really destructive. You know, okay, Gavin, you get sweet dreams. Yeah, it's 5:30 a.m. You probably better get some sleep. Yeah, Max. See, that's what I'm saying. You know, people with false intentions, even if they don't do it intentionally, just them being around and you treating someone differently than how they are is it causes a um lack of resonance. You know. Yeah, that's exactly it, Felix. They just kept poking enough to put you off balance while telling you they were your friend. Hell, we stood up for them in the community. We did all kinds of things for them. And they spoke gratitude, but instead used their finger to poke. So yeah, Max. Hopefully things will get better now that they're out of your picture. Yes, over the long term, it undermined your stability, and it was a problem. It was a big problem. It's a damn good thing they're gone. Okay, so I'm probably not going to talk too much more about Sister Shiv because I'm not really even wanting to encourage people to have something like this. I mean, it is a very useful and potent weapon. It is literally a weapon. This is a magical weapon. All right. Now, we've got our last category. And the one we'll be talking about more on Saturday. And that is physical weapons that are magically charged. Dream Staff counts as one of those as well. Sorel did, but that's a higher level of it. That's a manifestation of trauma. You know, while we have weapons that are imbued with magic. This is different. This can be done through sigil work, done through the same thing I was talking about, where you given the item in astral form, and you can even put servitors in swords, you know, and that's actually very common. I mean, it isn't called that, but what else is it when you name a sword? Right? That's part of how we do these things. You know, that's one of the things. If you're going to magically imbue a weapon, give it a name. And we can, you know, put sigils on it, to consecrate it so that it can break shields. That's one of my favorite ones. My old war club that I had before I had this dream staff had all kinds of sigil work up and down it. There were ones to make the strikes be more painful. There were ones to cause reverberation in the hit. There were ones that were intended to, like I said, break shields or things that cause intimidation. Intimidation is one of the best things to put on a weapon. I know it doesn't, it seems like that's almost decorative, but things that are going to keep the other person off balance, keep them not feeling confident and focused, are great things that you can do anytime you're in a moment of combat. Right? And like I said, we're going to talk more about that one on Saturday. So I think we'll leave off there with that. And now that we're an hour in, maybe actually start talking about what he said, yeah? Okay. So like I said, and I've been dwelling on for an hour now, he really took liberties with the title of this. The 5 classes of magic weapons are divided according to their function rather than by the gross appearance they manifest on the physical plane. By their function. If their function is in combat, they're not a weapon. Now, he does talk about the sword and pentacle. The sword and pentacle are weapons of analysis and synthesis, respectively. Tools. And yeah, okay, yeah, use the pentacle to create etheric forms. I suppose there is some truth to that. But the sword is a symbol of authority. The sword is something to direct energy, to draw the circle, or cut through the ether to open a portal. I don't know where he gets this about analysis. It does say scission. Oh, and destruction. There you go. Yeah. Now when he says that they're both used, that both sword and pentacle are weapons through which the higher orders power of will, perception, imagination execute mental commands on the planes of middle nature. Ah, yeah, a pentacle, yes, it can be used to create etheric forms in. It's a good place to hold energy. Sword, to me, a sword is, as he said, to sever, but also, and it's what we typically draw the circle with. It is a director of energy and a cutter of lines, kind of like Noctera there. You know, that's basically what she is a magic sword. I mean, it's a highly charged one, connected to some dream work, and it's got a has a mana battery that is that's a living potato golem. Oh, love. You still do magic. We still do magic quite a bit together. Okay. The wand and cup are used to transmit power. So that's, once again, the wand, to me, is something designed to direct energy flows. The sword does, but it's kind of like the difference I was talking about before about Noctera and my bone scalpel. The sword, when you direct energy with the sword, it's very broad strokes. It's very pushing. While the wand is much more finesse. The wand is for getting energy into small places. I heard another gunshot in the city just now. Oh no. I lived in Ogden, which is Utah. I would hear gunshots almost every night. But I wasn't one of the worst parts of town. Yes. Yes, you did have your altar was has been taken up by all of our wedding workings. Yeah, it's amazing how much gunshots happen in cities. Like, I hardly ever heard about anybody getting shot, but I'd hear gunshots all the time. But I did live in a pretty bad part of town for Utah, for Ogden. Um, so let's see. What else do we got to say here about this stuff? Yeah. To me, the cup or chalice is to hold things. I mean, I suppose you can pour things, energy out of the chalice and onto something, but it is a retainer. It is a container, and he does kind of talk about that. There we go. The cup can be restarted as an etheric receptacle for magical perception. And he talks about using a tarot pack or like all kinds of different stuff to hold a mirror, a shoe stone, a state of trance, a tarot pack. You know, in this particular book, I feel like he's just decided he's going to get some important magical words in there. And attack whatever he wanted to him. I just makes very little sense to me why he would say that that a tarot pack is a cup. I've been struggling with that since I read it. I mean, yeah, you could hold energy in a pack of tarot cards for sure, but you'd be better off using a crystal or a marble even. Like a pack of tarot cards, if you put them in there, it's going to affect the tarot cards. You know, it's not really a great container. Better off using a random stone on the ground. Yeah, none of this makes sense as a magical cup. The chalice has very specific uses. The chalice is something that contains energy. It is a receptacle. It is a receptacle for the athame when you're doing the great work. It has specific representation, and you can bring things out of the chalice or cup. But I feel like he's doing himself and is all of us a disservice by hooking these things together. It is correct that the wand weapon, similarly appears in a profusion of forms as an instrument to assist in the projection of magical will onto the etheric and material planes. It could be it could be a general purpose sigil, an amulet, a ring, or an enchanting mantra. Those aren't wands. Those are other items that you could perhaps use to channel or direct energy. But a wand is useful because of its shape, because of how it is designed to direct energy. You know, calling these other thing wands is just muddying the water. I don't get it. Like this whole passage is just, you know, making me feel like a noob again because this is how I felt the first time I read his book, only I was even more judgmental. Because, of course, when I first come into magic as a noob, I thought I was the only one that knew anything, just like a lot of noobs. Figured out a few things on your own, or with the help of, I did have some stuff passed down, but you think you're the one that knows the secrets. We all go through that stage at one point or another, either as a noob or halfway through the noobhood, right? Or the very edge of becoming something not a noob, though we should all stay noobs and be convinced that we know the great secret, because each one of us has our own great secret, right? But that also doesn't mean we can't learn from each other when it makes sense. And I feel like we've learned a lot through this book. I've remembered some things, and reading this, come to better understand it than I did the first time. And so, it's been of value. But this particular bit here on magical weapons, I just feel like he's just muddying the waters. Like, he wanted to put some stuff in that would draw people's attention. Because the word magical weapon draws a lot of attention. I mean, there have been a whole lot of people clicking on this live just because of that name. So I think that's what's happening here. Is this was him tacking the word magical weapon onto this bit. Clickbaity. Before clickbait was a thing. And then he kind of essentially clickbaited me into clickbaiting the name of this one. But I didn't leave a clickbait. First thing we talked about was magical weapons. Actually talked about magical weapons. And so the last one he talks about here is the lamp. And that's one that you don't see in Wicca, that sort of thing. The rest of this, the sword, the wand, the chalice, the pentacle, immediately makes me think of Wicca. But the lamp, well now, this is necromancy. This is druidism as well. If we get the right lamp. But he doesn't say anything that makes any sense for that. The lamp weapon is only named as such because of the popular analogy of spirit with light. Chaos, the ultimate substrate of existence, and Kia, the personal life for itself, are equally likely to be felt as an awesome darkness or as both brilliance and voidness simultaneously. As a device to channel these forces to the mundane conscious of the magician, there's no limit to the forms the lamp might take. An idea of God or the Tao. No, what are you talking about? He doesn't even talk about anything with the lamp except for that he says the lamp. And then he starts talking about concepts of God and the purpose. Bringing light to the universe, I guess, is kind of what he's trying to say here. But a lamp, a magical lamp. And I'm not talking about the kind you rub and a genie pops out. Can be a very potent magical tool. Now, most of the lamps that I know of that work in this area are ultraviolet, black light, right? Even in the olden days, like before there was light bulbs, we're talking about a bulb, a glass bulb of some kind that is colored that translucent purple color, and a candle put inside. The black light is powerful for several reasons. And primary amongst those, when we're working with necromancy, is that it is a light that is not the sun, that is not like the sun. Yeah, a flashlight, a candle, these are sunlight in another form. Well, not really sunlight, but they're that type of light in another form. They are things that damage decay, while a black light does not. It's almost a paradox. It's a light that doesn't provide light. A light lit with a black light is still dark in a way, even though you can see. But it also reveals, especially organic matter, right? That's one of the whole things that they're using it for forensics and stuff nowadays. You put the black light on there, and any blood that's ever been on that object comes forth, and any other fluids that have been on the sheets or whatever pop out, and it creates another layer, right? It creates a layer over reality. It creates a second place. And that is what a lamp, as a magical tool, is for. It sheds its power, it projects its power out and creates a force within its being. It doesn't have to be a black light. Now, for necromancy and work like that, like most of the stuff I've done like this, it's a black light. But you could use any colored light, and within that color, give it an intent, give it a vibe, give it intent, and it can broadcast that intent out and create an area of influence. The lamp is used to set the vibe for a spell, help create the background. Okay. So, that's the magical weapons chapter. Magical paradigms was a lot funner. We'll get into that in a second here. Just kind of gathering my thoughts on it. I think next time is the last reading for this book. We're probably going to finish the book next time. So, yeah. Like I said, if you have any suggestions for what book you want to do next, if no one comes up with any suggestions and I find a good thing for it, we're probably going to be talking about the never-ending story as a magical tome, which it very much is. And I actually think that could be a lot of fun. You know, excellent read as an adult, especially. Like I never read I hadn't read the book until I was an adult. I'd only seen the movie, and the movie actually ends halfway through the book. Part 2 of the never-ending story is actually just as close to the book as part 1, which both of them take a lot of liberties. But yeah, that's shadow work right there. Finding out that the second part of the never-ending story was accurate. Cool. So yeah, I think we probably will do that. We'll probably read the never-ending story next. It's an excellent read. I'll have to be reading it digitally as well, though, assuming I can find a copy, because I gave my copy away after I read it because I wanted other people to read it. So Now we're going to talk about magical paradigms. And the interesting thing about this, and he got to it, is that in a lot of ways, all are true. These are all, like I was talking about, I think, oh shoot, we was talking about it on one of the lives recently. I was talking about layers of reality. But they're also separate things. They're separate levels of reality, and they're all working at the same time, but it depends on your perspective as to which one of these paradigms you're actually working from. This part of the book, like I said, I enjoyed this chapter. This is pretty good. I liked what he did here a little more. So, the chaotheric paradigm. The manifest universe is just a tiny island of comparative order set in an infinite ocean of primal chaos or potentia. Um, you know, we talk about this a lot. The idea of the nothing and I called it potentia. I kind of liked that word. For everything there is an equal and opposite thing, and the sum total of the universe is zero. And yet let it also be known that for everything there is an equal and opposite thing, and the sum total of the universe is unknowable. That's what we're talking about here with this chaotheric paradigm. The idea that it's all just chaos. There is a constant conflict of chain reactions that are just shooting about. But these other theories, they're saying that too in another way. Oh, nice. Good job, Felix. The Internet Archive has never-ending story. I figured it would. Very cool. Yeah. All right. I'm excited. It was a good read. I'm excited to read it again. I do wish I had a physical copy of it because I prefer to read physical books, but that'll do. That will do just fine. It's a good book. And as I say, it's a magical tome. The guy that wrote that was very clearly into magic and was trying to initiate the book. Reading the book and understanding it is almost an initiation process. Yes, we're doing that next, unless I suddenly get outvoted by the end of this live or the conclusion of the next one. But okay. Yeah. This chaotheric paradigm is just that. We've talked about this a whole bunch of times. That is random chain reaction, but in this chaotheric paradigm, they're not thinking much about they're not talking much about the fact that chain reaction cause and effect is patterns, it's spirals, it's a whole manifestation of repetition and fractals, just like the fractals that they do, and interconnectedness of everything. The next one he's got is probability manipulation. And that's basically the same thing, but the idea that you can figure out probability and mathematics within it, though there is always going to be a hidden variable that controls the form of the number of possibilities. Yeah, I mean, well, I guess he doesn't exactly say that, but that's the way I see the paradigm he's talking about there. It's like a coin, right? But I don't know. I'm just gonna put my own words in here. What's the book title? The book that we have been reading is Liber, Null, and Psychonaut. Um, let's see. Hold on. I gotta go to Facebook for a second. I can give you a link to where you can get a link to it, but I myself cannot provide a link here directly, or I will get a copyright violation. What is going on here? Okay, here's the right group. Pinned post. What's going on? There we are. Oh, I need to go to this post. Get a share for it. Oh, come on. Freaking thing. Okay, I click here. Right? Then I can get a. Oh, you're screwing around. Hold on. Just a second. No, not. Why is it doing this to me? No, I don't want to do any of those things. I want a link for this post. Right, you know what? I'll probably get away with this. Yeah, I should get away with that as long as I don't pin it. Of course, I did pin the one that fit. It'll be fine. Okay, so anyways, as I was saying, probability manipulation, right? The way he describes it is with Heisenberg's certainty principle, which I feel like I know, but I can't think of off the top of my head, quite frankly, and I never did go look it up. But it's the probability manipulation. This particular paradigm is one that I very much understand. What he's talking about is that, or what he should be talking about, because I feel like he got a little what's the word? I don't think he did a manipulation, but it's still an interesting. This is the essentially the belief that, well, the patterns I was talking about, that yes, the world is madness and chaos, it's all just a big chain reaction, but we can figure out the probability of events and make educated guesses about what is going to happen. One of my favorite things to think about in this particular thing is a coin flip every time you flip the coin, it's 50-50 odds whether it's going to be heads or tails. And even if you flipped it 100 times, and each time before that it landed on heads, technically, the odds in the next flip being heads or tails are 50-50. But that's also not true, right? What are the odds of flipping a coin 100 heads and it coming up a heads 101 times in a row? There is another factor going on there, one that we can't account for, except for with understanding probability. Yes, technically it's a 50-50 chance, but the more times it does this one, the less probable it is that it's going to keep being ahead, right? Though it technically could happen. It's a 50-50 flip each time. Even that 10,000th time of flipping it. Even if it's been heads every time before that, it's technically 50-50 chance whether it's going to be heads or tails. But the odds are, really, that it's not. That it has to land on the other one at some point, right? And that's what we're talking about here with the probability manipulation paradigm, is figuring the odds. Gambling man's paradigm, in a way, right? Where did I just sit that vague? Oh, I put it in the book. Silly me. And I don't have much more to say on that, really, with the probability manipulation, but this is part of how divination really works. Is we're tapping into that line of probability around every situation. We're tapping into that line that says the next flip shouldn't be another heads. And that's why divination is never perfect, because we're reading probability, right? You shouldn't ask your tarot cards if you're going to win the lottery when they say yes, go spend all your money on lottery tickets. I mean, I'd definitely go buy a lottery ticket if the tarot cards told me I was going to go that it was time to buy a lottery ticket, but I wouldn't bet the whole house on it, right? Same thing. Morphic field theory. Now this one, as soon as I hit this one, I was like, man, you blew it with the lamp. Right? Because he could have talked about the lamp and morphic fields and made that a segue for the morphic field theory. What was that? Oh, my phone's dying. But morphic field theory is the idea that everything has a field of energy coming out around it. And, pretty self-explanatory that. And again, yes, and yes, all at the same time. These things are all things that are occurring. Everything has an aura. Everything has a morphic field, as he put it. Briefly, it states that whenever a new event occurs in the universe, it predisposes all subsequent similar events to occur in the same way by the agency of a morphic field. But then he talks about the other stuff too. Okay. Ubiquitously across space and time. The hypothesis does not concern itself with why the event occurred in the first place, but suggests that as soon as it has happened, it generates this morphic field, which makes it more likely to occur again. Yeah. Every time a pattern is repeated, the momentum of its cycle increases. Which is why if you did flip a coin 10,000 times and it was a head each time, the odds are once you get that high that it actually probably would be a heads again. But there's limits to that, right? A cycle, the momentum of a cycle can break that cycle. That's what's Sheldrake's morphic field is a good theory. And that's more what, I keep saying he's talking about this, and then I read something and you think I hadn't read it, but I did. He just, woof. Entities, gods, and demons represent the morphic fields left by animals and humans. Thought sympathetic magic becomes a deliberate representation of event in miniature to produce a morphic field which causes the desired event to occur elsewhere. So he's more talking about synchronicity. I mean, I guess I just overlaid what I wanted him to have said again. But part of what he's saying here is that when things happen a certain way, it tends to happen that way. And there is very much truth in that. If things go this way in one place, the odds are they're going to go in a similar way somewhere else. That's the momentum of a cycle. It doesn't mean it can't be broken, and it doesn't mean that it won't be kind of just broken on its own. Sounds like belly fire. So there's this transcendental solar fire concept of a fire, body, or weapon that is so transcendently, extremely destructive and powerful that the fire can burn ashes and fire itself and burn everything. Um, there's the belly fire, which I talked about earlier, and that's the destructive power in the gut. It actually comes from the chemical process of food being broken down, and it is a thing of raw destruction. If you're talking about some kind of like actual bringing fire out of your hands, I don't know how to do that. Don't know how to do that. Wish I did. Okay. So his morphic field theory seems to be mostly more about synchronicity. As organic development occurs, a psychic field is generated which feeds back into the organic forms. Thus, each species of living being has its own type of psychic form or magical essence. That's what I was talking about before, right? About how each species has a spirit. Like, he's just using his words wrong in this whole bit here. Why did he call this the morphic field theory? It doesn't match what he's saying. You know, um, we could be talking about morphic field theory, you know, and the idea of auras and how everything has an aura that is connected. And that's part of like, it's a bit of what he's getting at here, but it's like he left out all the important bits. Part of this is that everything has a field around it, and all these fields are connected. And he just never gets to that. He doesn't bother saying it. Or didn't properly understand it. I mean, it's like he's leaving out pieces, right? Everything has an energetic field around it. Magicians consider that all life in this world contributes to and depends on a vast composite egregore, which has variously been known as the Great Mother, the Anima Mundi, the Great Archon, the Devil, Pan, and Baphomet. Uh, get Humana to Great Spirit, chaos itself. You know, he talked before about that with the chaotic paradigm, and then kind of steps on himself here. Now I realize he's talking about we should see all these paradigms at different points. And yes, we do want to move between these paradigms. But the ones he's talking about are literally just layers that should be worked on all at the same time. Yeah, I'm glad we're not doing another Peter Carroll next. We're gonna do some more Peter Carroll because he does have good stuff, but he also, yeah, I see holes here. I see some serious holes. This isn't put together well. But this is one of his early works, you know. And it's easy for us to critique now, but I did critique it as a teenager as well. I remember getting very frustrated with this book several times when I first read it, but it certainly didn't turn me off of chaos magic. Observer created universe. We usually tend to regard will and perception as separate functions of our consciousness or awareness. Indeed, our will and perception seem to be the most basic properties of our being. However, try making these assumptions. Everything we perceive is real. Anything we cannot perceive does not exist. Not for us, anyways. Anything we will that does not come into our perception was not will, but merely a failed wish. Then will and perception are the same thing. Yeah. See, the world does come into creation by our awareness of it. You know, by the end of this, he's basically talking about the law of affirmation, which I'm not totally trying to knock. Like, I feel like it's a bastardization of perception. It's, you know, belief. Oh my gosh, what a belief imparts reality. It does not create it. And he's basically saying that we're willing everything that is coming in that we see into being. And I would disagree. If our perception and our will were directly connected, we'd all see the world that we want. In fact, you do not want your perception and your will to be completely connected because then you're just going to be seeing what you want in the world and not what is. This is a part of the book where I very much disagree. I know I said I enjoyed this chapter more, but it's because I wasn't dull. Why are you calling these tools weapons? You know? So now we can will things into being, but we have to have a formed perception. We have to have gotten to the point of understanding where we can create intent, form, and charge it and release it simply within our mind. This is possible, but I disagree with his whole premise in this one. You know, the title observer created universe. We do live in an observer created universe. It is perception which imparts reality. And then we get to the holographic universe. And I really like the first bit he says here. To specify the position of a particle with complete accuracy, we would have to also specify the relative position of each and every other particle in the universe. And I mean, basically, he's talking about quantum entanglement here and the fact that all things are connected. And it's in this one that he gets to the saying, the universe is holding itself up by its own bootstraps. And that should have been in the observer created universe, in my opinion. That should have been something that we would say about the observer created universe. A holographic universe, you're just talking about quantum entanglement and the fact that, like I was talking about with the forms earlier, yeah? I mean, I'd call it a film projector, hologram, whatever you want. Energy passes through forms and creates the present. Thoughts condense or move any energy, any information in motion. Information in transfer is energy. Energy moves through those forms, projecting through them and condenses, creating matter. And this is how the material plane manifests. Let's see. And then you talked about dimensionality. And then he finally puts it all together with the last ones here. I'm curious what anecdotes is going to be. That might be interesting. But what are we talking about? Anecdotes and catastrophe theory and magic. That's what we're talking about next time. That could be fun. I'm very excited to get into the never-ending story. Okay, so higher dimensionality is getting back to that idea of the unseen variable that he was talking about in probability manipulation. And it doesn't say anything particularly profound, really. Fifth dimension would appear, a line would appear as a dot, etc. But that's just visualization of it. I found that part a bit funny because a line is a dot. We're talking about spatial relations. We're talking about either up and down or back and forth, right? So it's a visualization, but it's one that puts a misnomer into the concept immediately. But we are living in a reality of much more than just 5 dimensions, right? There are many different aspects and dimensions, even to the reality we live in, that we can't fully see, that we can't fully experience as as a human, as living in a material form. There are all kinds of influences and things that are affecting a situation that could be considered a dimension in the same way that up and down or time are. And one of those is that line of probability that I was talking about before, like with the coin flips. Yeah. I've been dwelling on that a bit tonight. But what's the word I'm looking for here? It's a thing that we can understand it's there. We know it's there. And in some ways, we can interact with it through tools or even through proper focus. We can get into that line that makes it less likely for the fifth time the coin flipped for it to be the same thing it was the 4 times before that, right? Even though technically it's 50-50, your odds are now much less than that each time you flip the coin and it's the same thing. Unless you get into some kind of line of probability, because sometimes that happens. Sometimes the unlikely is just going to keep happening. And your odds are much higher than 50-50 that next flip's going to be the same thing when there's something else affecting it. That's why this happens a lot with runes or tarot cards. If you're reading on a certain situation and there's a particular rune or card that is really drawn, connected deeply to what you're getting at, no matter how many times you ask a question, no matter how many different ways you're going to ask it, you try asking it, that same card or that same rune is going to keep popping into the reading despite any odds, right? And that's this fifth dimensional thing that we can't fully grasp and see. That is where magic works. That's why it feels magical. It's because it's happening in another aspect. I've never cared for the idea of using dimensions for time, space, etc. Because every time I hear dimensions, I start thinking about, like, one dimension over where my beard is orange instead of blue, or whatever. And he just kind of goes into that over and over again, and he has a diagram here, but he's still just talking about spatial relations with the diagram. I do like the bit he did with the chaos star. From different perceptions you see a point, or you see a line, but it's still causing a misunderstanding of what the fifth dimension is than it's helping. It's trying to get you to see it as this spatial thing, something in space. It's not. It's something different. And these diagrams just serve to confuse that purpose. But it is there, right? And I hope I'm doing a good job of explaining this. I mean, like, I've never taken probability in mathematics, but they've got to talk about that in there. They've got to talk about that in mathematical probability classes, about how the coin it's not 50-50 odds that it's going to be that it's going to be heads flip 10 times in a row on the coin flip. There's something else going on there. It may technically be 50-50, but it's not really. There are other influences, especially that influence of, well, if it's been heads this many times, it's got to come up tails eventually. Each time you get a head, the odds of it becoming tails next comes higher. And that line, I keep harping on this same thing, but that line of it has to be a tails next because it's been a head 5 times in a row, there's the closest I can come to describing that fifth dimension in a physical context. Okay, so he has this thing of primary reality, second reality, tertiary reality. And what he's talking about is the mental plane, the astral realm, and the material realm. And, this is something we've talked about many times. I'm going to go take the book off to the side for a moment. And like I say, something we have talked about many times. Something I'm always talking about is the three planes and how we're out of balance right now. Those three planes are out of balance. But we're going to go through the order of how of how a moment manifests. Even though I believe I just said it, we're going to do it again. Okay. A moment begins on the mental plane. Kind of. This is a way to see a sequence of events. But it is all three of these going off at the same time, all the time. You have information on the mental plane. This could be thought of as thought. And this is part of what we are perceiving. These are the three things we are perceiving. Right? Perception should be in the center. And then you can think of it as a triangle. And ideally, our primary perception should be in the very center. We, however, are focused on a particular aspect of the mental plane that thinks it's the material plane, that we think is the material plane. Where our entire universe, we're all focused on what we think the material plane is. And that's where we're getting this huge imbalance because we should be focused on all three at once. And we'd see the fifth dimension much better were we to be in that center. But, anyways, we have intent, we have information. Information could be seen as thought. Information and transfer is energy. And information makes up the material plane. Information and transfer, energy, makes up the astral realm. Now, I'm not talking about like electricity. I'm talking about energy. I'm talking about energy itself, as in the movement of information. The movement of information and transfer is energy. And depending on what this information is about, it creates forms. And as the information condenses, moving around these forms, as the energy grows tighter and condenses, when the energy condenses into a concept fully, well, E equals mc squared, right? It condenses down into matter and makes up the material plane. And this is going on a physical level to create the atoms, which then make the forms of tables, chairs, vapes. Every single molecule in the plastic, in the case of this vape, has its own backstory. Information in transfer, energy condensing around it to make the molecule of that plastic. And that's how this works. That's how the whole thing works. But that's also how a moment manifests. It begins as intent, and that intent gains energy and then moves through the material plane as actions, as events, time, right? All of the dimensions are connected as one dimension. They are all simply intent or information transferring through concepts to manifest in moments, matter, sound, action. It's all essentially the same thing. And that's what he's talking about with the holographic universe, or should have been. So yeah, we got 2 bits left. We got about another hour for the live of how long I usually talk. Let's see what else have anyone has any comments or questions about what we've talked about so far, now would be a great time to bring those up. Um, we're going to talk some more about magical weapons here in a minute. That is something I certainly have a lot to talk about, and I feel like anyone who wasn't here for the book club itself are probably here for to hear about magical weapons. So we'll get back to talking about that for the rest of the live here in just a moment. Why did the sigil work when I forgot about it, especially when I put blood on the paper sigil? According to Peter Carroll, when we forget about a thing, about a spell, that is what gives it its chance to get past what he calls the psychic censor, which is the disbelief in magic, not only in ourselves, but in those around us, affecting all the different belief affecting a situation. What I would say is that I don't believe in forgetting. I do believe in not thinking about a thing too strongly. What happens is when you think too much about a spell after it's been cast, and you think about I should have done, maybe especially if you think things like I should have done it this way instead of what I did. If you have doubts, regrets, or even just remember the shape a little bit wrong, now you're pulling at the form of the spell. You're fussing with it when it's trying to operate, right? And that can inhibit a spell's ability to manifest. Now, in this particular case, especially where you use blood magic, it's just that it took that long to get the right moment. Because blood magic is especially potent and usually gets over that stuff pretty good. So that was probably the first moment that that spell had a chance to manifest for the door to open while you were there. Because you may not have said it as, the door opening while I am here to do it, but that part of your intent, one way or the other, was that the door would open so you could see what was on the other side, I'm sure, or be aware of it. Because or maybe it did open other times and you just didn't know. Because if you were there, how would you not know? Thank you, Dirtbag Wizardry. Thank you. I am rather proud of the beard. I spent time brushing it and oiling it, dyeing it, obviously. When I got the time travel sigil tattoo and God Cronus delivered a message to believe myself, and soon 2 days later, that's when I have the tsunami. That's when I had the tsunami dream and unintentionally time traveling to the 17th century. Huh. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something. You got some kind of time magic thing going on there. That's cool. Let's see. Okay. Well, I mean, if you feel like you're having trouble with your magic, I think the important bit there is to get back to roots. Get back to understanding the self, right? That is the first and most important key to magical practice, especially if you're doing all the mechanical parts right still, but you're seeing a lack of results. Then you're probably not resonating with yourself properly. And you need to get back to yourself, get back to basics, and get a good look at not just yourself, but the truth, the real reality of your present situation and what is really going on. Because it sounds like you're disconnected a little in some way. This is just a guess. I don't know you. I don't know what's going on in your life. But a lot of times, if your magic isn't working, it's because something isn't resonating between you and the shared reality in some way. Or you're just not resonating with yourself well. Typically, one of those two things. Unless, of course, you think someone has bound you, and there are ways to undo that as well. Okay. And yes, Max, the elderflower liquor is very nice. Like I said, it's one of the ones you just kind of wet your lips with, though. You don't want to drink too much of it at once, which is why I figure it's a good thing for the lives, because I do like to have a little bit of a buzz going on. I like to just get a little loose during the live, but I don't want to get like I did the sorcery self defense Saturday, whichever one that was, where I found myself too drunk. Like I wanted to stand up and do some stuff. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna stumble. Thanks. Thank you, Dirtbag. Dirtbag Wizardry. I like the name. So, I said we were going to talk more about magical weapons. Um, like I said, he real loose with the term weapons. To me, a magical weapon, I mean, any item most any magical item can be used as a weapon. You know, you mentioned wands. Wands absolutely can be used as a magical weapon. They can direct energy depending on what kind of energy you're directing. They can be used as a weapon. But a wand can also be used to heal. A wand can be used to perform any number of magical rituals. So I don't feel like it was right for them to call it a magical weapon. Certainly can be, but not just directing. Like this is a wand. Sister Shiv is a wand made from the bayonet of an SKS, and I don't know what it all did before it got in my hands, but it was military surplus, so it may have already been initiated in some ways before I got it. Like I said about those, um, it does need to know what that release feels like. It needs to have actually done that release in your hands. And again, I'm not talking about going out and harming a person. You know, this should be something that is done in a humane, ritualistic manner of a food animal, and then the animal eaten afterwards. And I don't usually talk about that part of my practice on the YouTube, but it's not something I do on a regular basis, just to be clear. That type of thing should be done properly and treated with respect. And definitely any animal involved should be treated with as much kindness as possible. Cruelty is counterproductive. Okay, so oh, there's a type of magical weapon that I did not talk about at all yet. Music. Music is very powerful. And we're going to start talking a bit more about actual magical combat here in a second. But one of the most powerful forms of destructive magic is music. Magic or music can summon up any emotion, any magical vibrations. Even my flute can be used as a magical weapon. I don't use it that way, very often. Most of the time when I'm casting with my flute, it is to open up things, clear out an area. So, I mean, well, no, because even most of the time when I'm playing my flute to clear out an area, what I'm actually doing is adding energy to stir things up, to get things moving, to knock the dust off the shelves so I can get the dust, so I can suck it up, right? But it can also be a magical weapon. We can use music to broadcast our intent. We can use music to broadcast our presence and force our presence into a room, pushing other spirits out. We can use music to cast, to sing songs that are part of curse work. We can use magic music to summon war, war gods. We can use it to summon warriors. Like the particular song that I was playing, that is actually the beginning of a war dance. This is another way where music is a weapon. And that's another part we're going to talk about with magical weapons is in preparation. Yeah. Magical weapons are things that can be used before any type of situation where you might find yourself in danger. I mean, we tend to think of it at not quite as, but a shield is a weapon. And that means actual protection sigils are magical weapons. Yeah. The sword and shield, both are weapons. Just because the shield is mostly blocking other people from harming you does not make it not a weapon. It is something that is used in combat. And you can strike with a shield. But this puts protection sigils in a category akin to magical weapons. And then we have actual attack sigils. These are most definitely magical weapons and are created very much the same way that any sigil would be. You could make an intent and give it a form. Now, that intent can be like what I was talking about with Black Unigriffin earlier, and she asked about making a bomb. You can do this with a sigil. You can put the sigil, the energy into a sigil that whenever someone with a certain intent comes near the sigil, it is then going to blast out destructive energy. This can work with limited results. I've seen it be very effective, but it's not necessarily going to be unless you put a whole lot of work into that sigil, time things perfectly, and make sure the person actually sees the sigil and can gauge what their reaction is going to be. Now, for astral beings, to ward your your temple or your sleeping area or wherever you want, it can be done to an intense effect because you can contain an etheric charge in the sigil that will then go off if a particular type of astral entity enters the area. And this can be, like I said, this can be extremely powerful. Anytime you're blasting an astral being with etheric energy, that air energy from in between, veil energy, whatever you want to call it. We've been using the word etheric. That is one thing that was brought up in this book. I was like, oh, that's a much better word than what I've been using the last few years. You know, but that plasma, if you will, that type of in between energy that is more condensed and heavier than just the usual astral energy. It's more condensed around a concept and a form because it's coming from a material being. And you can put that in sigils to ward your area. It's very effective. We can also create strike sigils. I have seen this done with surprising effect. One of my uncles, oddly enough, one of my uncles on my mom's side, who, well, I'm actually the one that introduced them to magic in the first place. But either way, they through a combination of sigil work and using a statue, did manage to actually cause a physical impact on someone they were targeting. Like the guy woke up the next day and had bruises on his ribs, and that was done the combination of a statue that he has in his backyard, like an actual like terracotta statue, and sigil work through which he was visualizing the statue coming to life, entering through the sigil, and striking the other person. And that was pretty effective. And in the circumstances, I was talking about my uncle and the person who was casting it, so I know for sure that it worked. It was a strange situation, but my family life has always been a strange situation. Okay, so yeah, sigils can be very much be used as magical weapons and just, well, sound. Now, they talk a lot about in magic with like the keys and stuff, it's especially big with karate, but you can add intent. Mentioned earlier before about putting intimidation sigils on your whatever weaponry you're trying to use. These screams can cause intimidation. They can cause people to react. But if you're going to be doing it, like if you're in an actual combat situation, and if you're going to be doing them with your strikes, don't always do it. Sometimes do it and don't throw one, right? You want to mix things up. You don't want to mess that up. But especially if you do, like you talked about it in the Psychonaut part, the idea of making a sound sigil, like, making a sigil of this punch hurts really bad. And then take letters from that and form that in whatever way you want to make a sound that you can and do that with your punch. And this can help, especially on your own side, because a lot of strength and a lot of speed comes with confidence and belief. Like the little engine that could. You can convince yourself you can pick up more weight. You can pick up more weight, right? To a point. This isn't like an unlimited fountain of infinite energy, but you can use sigils to make yourself stronger. You can imagine a sigil, make a sigil just from strength, or even use the rune uras for strength, and simply have it in your mind and visualize it as you strike. And this will add strength to your punch. You can even add literal curse work, like put an intent of whatever type of ill intent you want to put, and just put that into the punch. Visualize the sigil that you've created for it enacting at the moment of strike. Right? I did this to a kid in junior high to make him go bald by the time he was 30. I think that would may have I don't know if it worked on him. He was in junior high. Certainly worked on me. Bald by the time I was 23 years old. I don't really think that's why. It's genetic. Um, there's this book written. It's actually a journal of of the first two French fur traders to go into the part of Michigan where my ancestors are from, and they meet someone who I'm a direct descendant of, Saginaw, and they talk about him in the book. And what they said about him, first bald-headed Indian I've ever met. You know, that's when I knew I was screwed. And, belief in partial reality. Maybe that's why I went bald by the time I was 23, because when I was 15 years old and I read that book and I was like, oh God. Even my Ojibwe ancestors were bald. I'm screwed. But while we're on that subject, it's not the only I got personally insulted by a book one time. There's this book called The Pontiac Conspiracy. Saginaw is Pontiac's basically son-in-law. And that's who I can actually trace myself back to. But he's talking about Pontiac, who, if I'm Saginaw's son-in-law, I can technically trace myself back to Pontiac as well. Um, he says, but Pontiac, by the way, was Ottawa. But the line eventually gets back into. Anyways, none of that matters. There's a book called Pontiac Conspiracy, and at the very beginning of the book, it says something about them being drunken degenerates, and his offspring are no account drunken degenerates to this day. I was like, hey, you're talking about me. I don't think I'm a drunken degenerate. Anyways, gotten quite a bit off the subject there, I suppose. Um, yeah, magical weapons can be created from anything. A lot of the times, if I'm cursing someone, we're just gonna get into curse work here. Um, First off, and I've said this before, when I am cursing somebody, and this is my advice to anyone cursing somebody, you want them to know, right? That fear is part of how you get in. Fear is not the only factor that should be going on in a curse, but it's what gets you in the door, right? And even if they're not going to react with fear, if you can predict how they're going to react, you can tailor the spell to that. It's like I was talking about before about the sigil. When someone tries to do a certain comes in with a certain intent or performs a certain action, it makes the sigil go off. If you can tailor the curse for how they're going to react when they find out they've been cursed, this is the best. Ideally, I like to actually leave something for the person to find. And this should be something that is, as far as the visuals, it should be visibly connected to them. It should be disturbing and even kind of gross in some way, right? They should come across it and be like, "Ugh," and don't like the idea of seeing their picture and all that ick. And they should have a strong guttural reaction. Even if they don't have fear, even if they don't believe in magic, if they see this, some of their hair in their picture tied up on a bloody doll, no little poppet with like, you know, piece of steak hanging out of the arm or something, it's gonna freak them out a little bit. And there you go, you're in. It sticks in their mind. It creates an idea. And it's not all there is to it, but it creates a nocebo effect. Placebo being the power of faith healing, right? we tend to think of these things as, oh, a placebo. If it's a placebo or a nocebo effect, that means it's not real. But it is real. People get better from placebo effects. That's why they got to take it into account in every study. People get harmed from nocebo effects. It's like, how many more people have problems from cigarette smoking since they started putting pictures of all the bad things that could happen to you and constantly telling you cigarettes are going to harm you. People used to live to be 80 years old smoking. I'm not saying smoking is good for you. It was never good for you. It's always been bad for you. But when you're being constantly reminded how bad it is for you, it has a nocebo effect. Just like with curse. You want it, ideally, you want them to be thinking about it from time to time. You want them to be reminded. You could even leave things on there where they will find it more than once to give them something to be reminded. And you don't need them to know that it was you that's doing it, especially if you're worried about repercussions. Even better, if they don't know who left the thing, especially if they find things more than once. They start wondering who's doing this. Who, even if they don't believe, they're going to be wondering who. They're going to be thinking about it. And as things get worse, they'll start, right? And then there are other ways to curse as well. That sometimes you don't have access to the person. You don't have a way to leave a bloody poppet on their doorstep. You don't have a way to even message them and say, "Hey, dude, I freaking cursed your ass." And in these cases, you need to have a more direct effect. Like the guy that my uncle bruised, he didn't know my uncle was going to curse him. You need to find actual. Well, I mean, in this case, my uncle did have physical access to the guy. He touched him lots of times. They've even punched each other. They've been in fights before, so he had lots of visual representation to go with. Actual knowing what physical striking contact with that person felt like. But sometimes you don't have these things. You need to find other ways to connect. Like there's a particular political figure who I've been working on. And I had to, because I had no other connection to them, I had to develop an understanding of who they were. I had to develop a feel for their personality, their morphic field, and their actual being, right? And then I use actual shadow magic in Sister Shiv. And it's taken a while. I've done a few videos on this. In fact, some of you may have some clue who I'm talking about. But through the shadows, we are able to reach out past most types of just want to make sure something real quick. Through the shadow, we're able to reach past most types of defenses. I'm not talking about shadow work here, about understanding your darker self. No, I'm not talking about any Jungian thing here. I'm talking about the absence of light, not darkness, which is the complete absence of light, but varying degrees of light, shadow, and the connection there. But when I first managed to do this, they glitched right at the podium. And just froze. Like, might know what I'm talking about when I say that. They just literally froze in the middle of a speech. They glitched. And I don't know if I should say a whole lot more about that because it looks like I finally succeeded last week. But that's using something like this and shadow work. If you're going to try and get somebody like that, you need to find the way to connect to their field, to get an understanding, and to get past their barriers. And that can be really difficult to do, especially since you have to be able to even empathize with them. You have to be able to feel like them, to be able to understand. And that's why I'm not able to do it in Trump. I can't get there. I can't do that. At least I haven't been able to. I've tried, but I can't. I can't develop an empathetic link to that. There's too much. There's not things I can't immerse myself in. But I did glitch. The one that rhymes with that. I'm not going to say his name. I feel like that's taking it way too far. But I did glitch the blank. Rhymes. Anyways, yeah. Let's see. What else? What else? What else do I have to say about magical weapons? I'm sure I've got a lot more to say. We've talked quite a bit about astral combat. The wit. I talked about this once before on the channel. And what more do I have to say on it? Okay, the wit of an object is not its weight. It is its existence. It's the variable in information that makes up. It's understanding the information that is transferring through the matter of the object you were holding. And that has a lot to do with the weight. Or it has something to do with the weight and the balance. This is something that I talked about with throwing knives. Last time I talked about it, throwing the wit of a knife. And it's about the momentum. That's why knife throwing was a good way to explain the concept. And I did a couple a couple no spins and some half spin throws talking about this. I'm going to come back to that as well, but we're going to stick with the half spins because it's easiest to learn, most useful. It's the only one that actually is useful. The thing about knife throwing is it's cool looking, it's neat, it's fun. Not very effective. Except for half spin, because it's a great way to distract your opponent and get you a chance to run away. Really, throwing your knives at your opponent is, in a lot of ways, potentially arming them. And, they don't stick in very far. It's definitely not, there are exceptions to that. If you hit them in the right spot. But half spin is literally just half spin of the knife. You're talking about, well, with this one. With this one, it'd be like the amount of distance for this to go. And then full spin is a different thing. But because of the wit thing, we might get into at some point. But the wit of an object is part of how we use a weapon properly. It is, well, that same empathy that I talked about, developing the empathy for the political figure that I managed to glitch by kind of entering into his morphic field. And luckily, I was able to get in there enough to fully understand, and there was some guesswork involved about how they thought about certain things and how their mind worked. But I got close enough. I got it. Did the thing. It's the same with an object. You want to essentially develop an empathy. You know, they talk about how becoming one with your sword. But that's kind of it. Not really. It's developing a mutuality, a rapport, a I just don't have the word I'm looking for other than to call it the wit. And I call it the wit because it sounds like weight, kind of, but it's also the knowledge, the cleverness, the information of the knife, right? There's a magical understanding in that. But I feel like at this point, I'm basically just talking about how to wield a knife, and that's probably not what most of you are here for. Um, I'm gonna do the first intermission of the night. Be back in just a moment. Okay, I'm back. Realizing I haven't plugged the channel at any time tonight, so we'll do that next. 99 cents for to be a supporter of the channel, and I would really appreciate more people going ahead and signing up for that membership. One of the fun benefits it gets you is some of these other emojis. If you remember the channel, you can use any one of these emojis. Got two different versions of ass for ass, which I haven't talked about much lately. We've got cash cow sigil, this half-pilled orange fire eye thing that I just thought was cool. It's also on the cover of my fictional work, Anarchy's Last Stand, and then another ass for ass. I can make a few more, I just haven't yet. But yeah, for 99 cents a month, you would be able to use those emojis on the live and watch the blooper reels. Above that, we have one for $9.99 that gets you 3 stick breakings or 1 cord cutting, and all the above perks. The next one is, oh no, I forgot the price. $19.99, I think, and that one comes with oh, I can never remember these things. Well, whatever the next one is, It comes with free consultation on spell work and potentially or no, that's right, a reading. That one comes with a rune reading or tarot reading every month, along with the other benefits. And then the top one, which I think is like 99.99, actually comes with a 1 hour session every month with a personal live where we will discuss um, whatever spellcraft you're working on and some personal work. But I'm certainly not asking everyone to get through the 99.99 a month one because, well, I only have so much time. But like I said, 99-cent one gets you some emojis and some blooper reels. Okay, there we go. I plugged the channel. I did the plug. Okay. So, I don't feel like servitors or egregores that are attack egregores are really are magical weapons. Kind of. Depending on how well you program them. Some of your servitors are just attack servitors, or I mean, if a drone or a smart bomb is a weapon, then I suppose they are. This can be a very effective way to launch an attack on someone that you don't have anything but like their name, or a very small connection. Because a servitor can follow lines, it can follow chords, it can follow even very small connections to people because it has a little bit of intelligence on its own, like a smart bomb or a drone. But if you're going to work with servitors, don't just make your servitor and tell it, hit this person, because it's not going to do very well. Don't just try and send it out as a blunt force. I know what I said about my uncle, but that was a special case. Send it out with they trip on their shoelaces, or they fall down the stairs, or something like that, right? Maybe not that specific, unless you know about rickety stairs at their house or something like that. If you do know things about somebody, use that information just like you would if you're hunting. Scout out your target and use what vulnerabilities you find. Programming salt. I heard this is very effective to put intentions into. Absolutely. Salt is very receptive of intent. That's why it's so great for casting circles and stuff like that, is because it takes that intent well. I mean, it's even better for purification than it is for other things, because salt tends to pull the impurities out of things and in its natural state. So that makes it great for purification, but it can take on just about any intent, just like a quartz crystal. Quartz crystals and salt are both open storage containers. They're a blank disk. You can put whatever you want onto salt or quartz crystal. That can be positive intent, ill intent. This is another. All right. So yeah, we can talk about that for a while. Like I said, with the salt, it can be put any intent into it. It is still best for purification because salt tends to pull out impurities. That's why it's great for salt baths. Or, of course, salt's great for salt baths, but that's why salt is one of the most commonly used things for baths. Well, physically, it pulls out impurities, but also spiritually. If you take a bath in salt, it's going to pull out all of your impurities while helping you have a more cohesive and defined form, especially if you're meditating in warm water. You can add other things to help strengthen your form, depending, and enchant yourself in different ways. But any of them, if you're going to be adding stuff to the mixture, you want to add it to the salt beforehand and program the salt so that it understands what each thing is for. When I was originally taught this, it was with herbs, and you were supposed to tell each herb what it was doing. Pull out the herb and say, okay, I'm adding this herb. I'm adding you rose petals because I want to have more beauty to my skin. I'm adding you um I'm having trouble thinking of stuff to put in baths, oddly enough. But whatever it is, right? You add that and you tell it to that, and then you put it into the salt so that the so you're activating the herb itself, but you're also programming the salt. And this can be done in a bath, in a salt bath, or any other thing where you're using salt as part of the spell. It's a great yes, lavender. Yes, I'm adding this lavender. Lavender, I am adding you to the bath to calm my nerves. And then you put it in the salt, and the salt gets programmed with it, and the lavender knows what it's there for. You've made a statement of intent. And yes, if you hadn't said anything, lavender and salt in a bath is going to calm you, but it's going to calm you even more when it's been stated, when it's been programmed, when it's been given intent. But we can also use salt for this in any way. And you don't need necessarily to have the components. You can simply charge the salt with intent. But it can be used as well with adding ingredients, especially herbs, and then grinding those into a powder with the salt. And then using that salt as a spell component for whatever it is you're trying to cast, or using it as the spell itself with the powder, and then your release would be to throw the powder into the air and let it disperse, or place it on the thing that you're trying to enchant. And like I said, the same thing can be done with quartz crystals. Obviously, you're not grinding quartz crystals up in a mortar and pestle. That's not going to work. But you can immerse the crystal in whatever herbs, like wrap it up in them in a pouch and charge it for days, and then take simply the crystal, and it'll hold all the energies that it was charged with inside the pouch or cauldron or box or whatever you want to use. For me, it's almost always going to be a leather pouch, power bundles. That's part of how I was taught. And it's something that really resonates with me. So I use those a lot. But you can put energy into a crystal. You can use this as a way to trap a spirit. Even, we talked about that earlier in the episodes, and he's talking about magical weapons. Why didn't he bring that up? How he talked about you could stab a crystal into the etheric form of a spirit and pull it into the crystal. It's true. You don't really need to stab it in there. You just got to imagine it pulling it in, right? You don't got to find it and stab it with a crystal. That's above and beyond. It's an unnecessary step. It's going to make it a hell of a lot harder, and it's not necessary. But you can charge a crystal with anything, even like we're talking about with magical weapons. Like I said, that there. But also, you can put a curse into a crystal and hide it in on someone's property. Yeah, that's how Peter Carroll suggested it. But like I said, you don't really need to. You can use it like a vacuum, create a vortex coming from the crystal, because the crystal can be programmed. First, pump the energy through the crystal and make it push out a vortex that's suck the thing that you're targeting into the crystal and then contain it in the crystal. And if you're trying to hold it in the crystal, make sure you don't just pull it in there, but then also tell the crystal, program it that the thing is contained in there, and still put it in a black box or a black leather pouch. So I could use salt to make everyone in my house get money like a magnet. Yes. In fact, it's all liquid form right now, but that's all money salt. It's all money salt that as it grows and dries money in. And I could very much dry some of that salt at this point, some of that water at this point, create the salt. And if I was to give it to someone else or pour it on someone else, they would be blessed with the money spell that is connected to it as well. It doesn't seem to be operating very well. That's it's not drying very fast. I'm actually probably going to boil that off soon. Worked great in the dry climate of Utah. Like I had it with them chalices. If you watch back to my old videos where I have all the shells and the salt garden going on behind me, that was one of the biggest ones that was going. Was the green one in a chalice, and it had gotten to the point where I could write a number of money on it, put it in the chalice, and as long as I didn't push things too far, I get that amount of money. So salt money magic is particularly potent, at least in my experience. But I was also literally soaking money in the crystal garden. So I've actually sacrificed money into the spell itself so that it has the morphic field because money draws money. That is the thing that gets money the most is money. Anytime you're actually doing a money spell, one of the things I suggest is using some money, as a seed. And this can be done in ways where you then actually, after enchanting that money, still go spend it. The money doesn't have to be sacrificed. In this case, it was. I literally soaked the money in the salt garden and let it become part of the crystal garden. And when I took it all apart, that money was completely destroyed. Like I wasn't able to wash it out and go spend the money. It was just bits of fabric in there. And that's going to depend, of course, though, on what kind of money. I'm pretty sure you're in the States. American money does not hold up. Canadian money up here, I suspect, might. But it's also because it's plastic. It's not going to absorb into the water the same way either. Yeah, salt is very effective for money magic. It can be very effective as a weapon, as a form of banishment. Actually, oh, you live in Boston. Cool. I haven't been in Mass. I haven't been in Mass much. A little bit. I like the bacon and the clam chowder. That's good. I know where there's clams now. I might make me some clam chowder, some fresh clam chowder soon. That sounds amazing. Hell yeah. I'm gonna make chowder. Anyways, um, salt can also be used as a banishing thing. Throwing salt at a spirit with the intent of making it disperse and leave is also very effective. This is something that's known in folk magic already. Oh, Pennsylvania from Philly. There I've been little more. I've been to I don't think I've ever actually been to Philadelphia. I've been through Pennsylvania quite a few times. Like never for very long though. When I was a kid, I'd always get Pennsylvania and Transylvania mixed up. If you're going through Pennsylvania, I'm like, oh no, I better watch for vampires. On this same note, marbles, something that is overlooked a lot, but are great containment vessels. They're little orbs of glass. Marbles, I have used for so many different things. You can use them to contain intent. You can use them to pull a spirit into. It's not quite as effective as the quartz, honestly. Like, I wouldn't try holding any kind of major spirit in a marble for very long. Yes, marbles. But they can hold intent. They're not as effective as a crystal because it is just glass, but glass is just melted stone. It's melted silica sand, right? And you can hold intent with them. And marbles are easy to get. You can just drop them places, put an intent into a marble and leave it somewhere if you want to affect a place. I've done that a lot with my job sites. Put in different and this or that intent into a marble that's going to help me with my job in some way, and then just drop it on the job site. Put it somewhere where nobody's going to trip on it, step on it and don't want to get in trouble like that. Don't want to accidentally hurt somebody, but they're inconspicuous. Someone sees a marble, they don't think much of it, and they hold intent for a spell just fine. Like I said, I wouldn't try and hold the spirit in one for very long, but they certainly hold intent. It hits, and you can shoot one out of a slingshot into places where you want to put intent. You got no other way of putting it there. Suppose you could do the same with a small quartz crystal, but marble's cheaper. Marble's easier to feel like it's okay to just ditch, and drop somewhere. I've done this with beads too. Because marbles are colored, you can color coordinate. Beads, same thing. Accidentally caused a fight in Job Corps because I dropped a red bead. Well, I say accident. I wanted to see what would happen if I dropped a bead provoking anger in the commons, and well, made two guys get in a fist fight and they both got kicked out of Job Corps, so it's kind of rotten of me, really. In my defense, I was much younger, and I just didn't think about consequences as much back then. It's the folly of youth, I suppose. Okay, so we're getting close to the 3-hour mark now. I'm gonna go ahead and open the floor back up. Well, the floor is always open for question, comments, concerns, but if anyone else has anything they want to ask about or say, now would be a great time to do that because we are getting towards the end of the live. Like I said, I usually aim for about 3 hours. And we're getting close to that now. Let's see. Oh, I said we can talk more about banishment, and we have we haven't. It's probably pretty surprising to quite a few of you that we're talking about magical weapons, and I have yet to bring up the personal sigil. Personal sigil is a very potent form of magic that can very much be used as a magical weapon. You can put any intent you want with it. But the reason I'm bringing it up right now is because, like I said, we'll talk a little bit about banishment here at the end. The most powerful form of banishment I know for astral beings is to push your own presence out. You can even push it into them and through them. If you concentrate your presence, your will, into a beam with your personal sigil and blast it directly at something, you can knock a hole in it. Not talking about material objects here, at least not yet. I've never succeeded in that. But this is one of the most potent things to use against a astral attack. Any type of being like that. And if you don't have a personal sigil, well, I recommend you get one, but if for some reason this just does not resonate with you, you can literally just push out your presence. Push out your will. like a magic missile, right? Like this is Dungeons and Dragons. And this will push spirits out. When you summon a god or a demon or a jinn or anything like that and ask it to banish another spirit, that's what it is doing. That's how it does it, right? That's how banishment of that type works. You can, of course, do the bit where you're create sound, ringing a brass bell and saying, "Get the hell out." Something about the frequency of a brass bell does tend to break up spirits. This works with etheric forms as well. That's why I hate to talk about it sometimes because I am very pro Fae. And I've learned, I have found ways for the Fae to be able to resist this. And it doesn't kill them, but it will push just about anything out of a room if you're banging it with the intent to push that thing out of the room. That being said, tinkling bells, pretty bells, can draw the Fae in. It's the jarring ting kind of bells that will harm things. And you know, I work with Fae not just as ask them for things, but I do things for them as well. And we've been working on ways to counteract that because they have their rights to. And yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't see your question there, Primordial. Have there been magical or chaos magic wars in the past? Well, yes. There have been wars in our history that involved sorcery. Um, One of the most famous examples is Haiti. Haiti used all kinds of spellcraft in their war against the French to get independence. All kinds of different stuff. I think maybe you're talking about like actual like gods battling each other. Oh yeah, happens. It happens. Certainly within the mythologies and stuff. There's gods within the same pantheons warring over stuff all the time, and there's all kinds of stories of like how the Norse beat out the Titans, the Greek gods beat out the gods. Well, murdered his father, right? They kept eating him. But I'm more interested in talking about the fact that yeah, Haiti, they used magic successfully to push the French out of Haiti. The Haitians did. Yes, the White Cliffs of Dozer. There's actually a person that died, not Dozer, Dover. There's the name of the book where they talk about this, and it was Gerald Gardner, I believe. And there were people that actually pushed themselves to exhaustion and died during the ceremonies where they were casting against the Nazis in World War II. My great grandfather Lemmy, one of his sons fought in World War II. Amazing, I can't remember his name right now. I know it. Oh no, Ian. Ian. I think that's the right one. Either way, his sons went over there, and through his sons, he was casting on World War II as well. Like specifically on Hitler and making sure that I don't know how he found out about Vril, but he was making sure that the German magic didn't work. As part of the reason that all that crap they were doing at the Eagle, I think they called it the Eagle's Nest, where Goring was doing all that Vril work and had incredible um, assets to work with. Had all kinds of, they're using Vril as a type of sex magic, and of all these willing women that he's working with, should have been incredibly potently magical, but for one, they didn't understand their entire paradigm doesn't resonate properly. And for two, they had Gerald Gardner, my great grandfather, and a bunch of other people casting like crazy on them. But while we're talking about it, I want to bring up Nanny. Nanny was a woman who worked with, oh shoot, I forget I always want to call it Wanga, but that's not that's the word that I have been learning. Obeah. She worked with Obeah in Jamaica, and there are all kinds of legends about Nanny to this day. And It's the reason there was no she's the reason there was never any really success with keeping slaves in Jamaica. That's how far they went with it. The Cameroon would come down and save the people that were enslaved and bring them back up into the hills. Very incredible woman. If you ever want a good story, read about Nanny. I kind of wanted to do like a video on her at one point, but I feel like I should probably leave that to some Obeya practitioner to talk about. Yeah. Um, you wonder how things have gone wrong. Well, look at some of the other leaders since then and the way they have used Wudang. Like I can't remember his name, but there was that one called itself Prince something or other that was doing some really crazy shit. And well, um I hate to stick my nose into things, but from what I understand, there are still debts the Haitian people owe from that they have not properly paid. I This is not my place. I don't want to say any more about that. Anyways, um, yeah. Then there's Dugan and all the stuff that's happening now. Yes, Alexander Dugan, who I'm constantly trying to battle with. I feel like I'm winning that one at this point. You know, like he almost got blown up. I really don't like to think that that my work that I was doing had anything to do with his daughter getting blown up. But Dugan's world is not good. They got overconfident, tried to take Ukraine when they apparently could not, clearly could not, and that fucked up his whole plan. At this point, I feel like I'm on top of Dugan as much as I can be. I mean, I've been fighting with that guy since the 90s. I came across him in the Yahoo chat rooms and have been trying to make sure his goals don't come to fruition since then. Because we don't need literal fascists in chaos magic. Not cool, unacceptable. And yeah, I will continue my work against Dugan until he is completely stopped. But I do feel like things are going in a positive manner. Okay, so before we go, I am going to plug myself one more time here. My email is eeos almost met eeosilwiddershins at gmail.com. Same as the name of the servitor there. Oh, I thought. Hold on, that didn't work very well. There's got to be a way I can just link my Gmail. Sure, I did before. Weird. Pretty sure there was a way to do that, but I can't think of how to do it right now. Anyways, my email is jeshuawiddershins at gmail.com. And I offer you know what? Let's not leave that one. Well, yeah, they can back up for that. Okay. So that's my email, jeshuawiddershins at gmail.com. And I offer spell services, which are like flat rates are going to be probably at least $40, but those can be, the price for spell work is variable on difficulty, on my end, components I will need, but also need. So like if you really need a spell cast and you don't have a lot of money, you can hit me up anyways. You know, that can be done on an as needed basis. Hold on just a second. So other than that, I offer also divination services with rune readings, tarot, or my assorted charm bag here. $30 for a small reading, up to $80 for a full reading. I also do cord cuttings for $30, and stick breakings are just $10. And all that can be, any of those can be acquired by contacting me at jesselwittershins.com. I do offer direct consultations as well, but that is, I do charge $100 an hour. Okay. Unless anyone else has any other questions they would like to ask, comments, concerns, anything about the live or any of my other videos, this will be your last chance. Give you a few minutes here, load another bowl. But it is definitely getting to be time to go. Once again, thank you all for sticking with me for the full 3 hours. I feel like this has been a great live. I've really enjoyed this. We're on with Liber, Null, and Psychonaut. Yeah, I agree. This was a great stream. Yeah, we're almost done with Liber, Null, and the Psychonaut. We're going to be doing the Never-Ending Story as a magical tome next. We're not quite done though. Next week we have the last bit, and then the week after that we're going to be dyeing my robe, and we'll talk about, I don't know what we'll talk about. Probably just the whole book in general. You know, go over the whole thing one more time while I'm dyeing, putting some more color into my robe. I know I'm not wearing the white one today, but it needs to be washed. It looks dingy. I didn't want to wear it. Okay. Yeah. I think that's going to be it for today then. Bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tao.